Greetings, my fellow gorehounds, and I just took a shower because it's hot as fuck outside and I was super fucking sweaty, and I just walked 2 hours to the theater, well, 1 hour there and 1 hour back, so, I really needed to bathe, and so I did that. So, if I'm glistening in this video, that's why. But enough about my personal hygiene, that's not what we're here to talk about today. What we are here to talk about today is the latest Blumhouse thriller, Don't Let Go, which is this interesting high-concept murder mystery about this cop whose niece is murdered under mysterious circumstances, and while he's trying to solve the murder of his niece, he ends up getting a phone call from his niece from the past and is given an opportunity to save her in the past and thus preserve her alive in the future. And it's almost as if Blumhouse took some elements from Happy Death Day but decided to make a way more serious movie out of it. But before we talk about the movie proper, we must first talk about what I thought going into this movie, and what I thought going into this movie is, well, I went in with almost no expectations whatsoever, because while I saw trailers for the movie and they looked interesting, I thought that the actual look of the movie, the visual presentation of the film, looked so damn generic that it could really go either way. But fear not, my fellow gorehounds, because this movie is actually pretty good. It's not gonna blow your mind and you'll probably figure out the murder mystery pretty quickly, but you get really emotionally invested in the cop and his niece to the point that you really want to see them succeed, and despite the overall bleakness of the movie, you want to see a happy ending come from it. So despite some of the generic elements, you still find yourself invested in the story and having a good time. Now, mind you, I don't think you need to go out of your way to see this movie. It would be a good matinee or something to catch on Netflix way later, but it is a good movie, with a couple notable shortcomings, and yes, one of those is the visual look of the movie, which kind of looks like that part in The Matrix in which Neo is going about his day-to-day job, his office job, and everything is tinted slightly green. That's the way this whole movie looks, and unfortunately, I don't think it adds anything to look like that. I know it's trying to look like generic, gritty reality, but that generic part is a real problem because it makes the movie not stand out as much as it should. And like I said, the murder mystery is very easy to figure out. I figured it out within the first 20 minutes of the movie, and I felt real bad about that because I was like, oh man, this movie's trying so hard to trick you as the movie's going on and throwing red herrings at you, but the ultimate culprit is so damn obvious that no matter what red herring they throw at you, you are not going to be tricked. Well, I shouldn't say that. At least I wasn't tricked. Your results may vary. And there was just something about the way the climax was edited that really didn't work for me, and I can't quite put my finger on why. I mean, I knew going into this movie that because of the two competing timelines going on, that the climax of the movie was going to have those two timelines running simultaneously and cutting back and forth between them. Parallel action, essentially. But there's something about the way it plays out in this movie where I didn't quite feel I had enough time to orient myself in either timeline, and as a result of that, I was a little disconnected from the actions taking place, even though I was emotionally connected to the characters and their effort to survive. But putting all that aside, the two things that really sell this movie are, one, the gimmick of the movie, the whole double timeline thing, and two, the relationship between the cop and his niece. And this is due in large part to really solid character writing and very solid acting. Both the guy playing the main character and the little girl playing his niece are fantastic in this movie, and their chemistry is really palpable. You totally buy that they're actually family, and you really feel for them every time something bad happens. Definitely be on the lookout for the girl in this movie, because mark my words, she's gonna go on to bigger and better things because she is fantastic in this film. And it's got a really great supporting cast that includes Alfred Molina, of all people, and I completely forgot that Doc Ock was in this movie until I sat down to watch it, so that was a pleasant surprise. Anyway, my fellow gorehounds, to reiterate, I enjoyed this movie despite its flaws, and I definitely recommend it as more of a Netflix or streaming watch or a rental or a matinee than a midnight experience. But I still recommend this movie, especially if you want to support a movie that has a majority black cast with the exception of Alfred Molina. And that's pretty cool. We need more thrillers like that. And with that said, I'll put some sort of Amazon affiliate link in the description below, and if you click that link and buy or rent or pre-order the movie with that link, then I will get a kickback from it. Oh yeah, and one last thing. There is a dog in this movie that is totally murdered on screen, so if you think you can't handle that, then you might want to skip this film. And yes, for me, when the dog died, tears. goddamn, the girl made me cry, the dog made me cry, the fucking cop made me cry, everything in this movie made me fucking cry like a goddamn baby. So how could I not recommend it despite all my complaints? And with all that out of the way, let us finally move on to the spoilers. Alright, so outside of its gimmick, this movie is a pretty straightforward murder mystery, so there really isn't much I can spoil outside of who murdered the niece. I mean, I suppose I could talk about how much I really enjoyed the way this movie handled its time travel aspect, because I really do like this movie's magical realism approach, and I like how early on it establishes some of its core rules, like how if she does do something in the past, it will affect the future. And they establish this in a scene in which he has her, like, draw, like, an X in, like, the garage with a spray can, and she does that, and then it appears in the future, so he knows he can actually change the past, and I really like the way they handled that. And I especially like the way they handled when she changes something really big. Like, for example, there's a point in which the main character is dying from a gunshot wound, but because she changes something in the past, he comes back alive and reappears at a different point in time, completely okay, because the timeline changed, so he was never in the scenario that got him shot in the first place. And what I really liked about that is that pretty much established that if things go right, if the main character successfully saves the girl, then there's a high chance that the version of him that's trying to save her is going to cease to exist, and the version of him in the past that has no idea that any of this is going on is going to continue on without him. So he's essentially a version of himself that's going to, like, die the way like in the Prestige, like when like the guy to do the trick in the Prestige would kill a clone of himself. He basically is the clone that's going to die so that the other version of him may have the happy future. And I kind of like that, even though that's very bleak, it also kind of is touching how far he's willing to go with this. Now, the one thing I don't think it handles very well is there is this one big plot hole, at least for me, in the movie, or at least a logical hole, and that's this. There's a point in which he stops the little girl from talking to the younger version of himself, probably because he has no idea what's going to happen if she does. The version of him that currently exists might just disappear, and I get that, but wouldn't it make the most sense to bring him in on all this? Let him know what's going on with the murder and stuff like that, so that he can be there and stop the murder when it's supposed to happen? Like, that's just seems like the obvious solution to the whole scenario. And once you realize that, it does kind of break the logic of the movie a little bit. And that did bug me. But because I was still emotionally invested in the core story of the movie, I just decided to let go of that. I decided to not let that weigh on the movie. But like with a lot of time travel movies, you're just going to have to, like, not think about it too hard when you're watching it. Now, the person who actually turns out to be the killer is probably the least interesting part of the movie for me because, like I said, I figured it out really early on, because it turns out that the person that killed his brother and his niece and his niece's mom is, well, his best friend and partner. Because of course it was his partner, because it turns out over the course of the movie that there's actually, like, police corruption going on, and there's this one drug lord guy that is secretly a collection of cops and not just an individual drug lord, and that his partner is part of that collective. And that, you know, it plays out pretty well. I mean, they try to trick you as the movie goes on, but I was pretty convinced that it was him from the get-go because all these seeds were there. And as much as it really wanted me to think that, oh, it's clearly Alfred Molina because the baseball glove, Josh! Except they also established that his partner had the baseball glove at one point, so, meh? Clearly it's still the partner. You can't trick me, movie. You can't trick me. That being said, the emotional turmoil that happens between the characters when all this is revealed and he's confronted by his partner, that works really well. I just wish that it wasn't cutting so fast in between the two timelines when it happens, because I just wanted more time to actually, like, let the emotion sink in. But there was one other aspect of the ending that didn't quite sit well with me, and that's that while the main story between the cop, his partner, the murder mystery, his niece, that's pretty much resolved. The murder is stopped. That happens. But the story as a whole, the overarching thing, the overarching, like, police corruption scandal, that's not really resolved. And I don't really know if that's like leaving it open for a sequel or something, or if it just felt like that really wasn't as important to the story, but they establish that his partner isn't working alone. He's working with a collective of cops, and they sent him to kill his brother. He was just the person who was sent. So they still want his brother dead, right? So there's going to be more hits on his family if he doesn't do something. So I just kind of feel like that was left a little open-ended. Now, granted, I may be being a little nitpicky there, but it's little things like that that add up over the course of the movie and kind of weigh it down, even though there's a lot about this movie that's really good. And hopefully I've done a good job of explaining the pros and cons of the movie and why I'm not like 100% all in, but also not 100% it sucks. 'Cause it really doesn't suck. There's some good, there's some bad, and of course, I'm the ugly. Just look at this fucking mug. Yeah, not even my mother could like this. Anyway, that's all I've really got to say about this movie. It's got some really good performances. It's got a really cool gimmick. It's shot very generically. It's got some generic plot elements. And the murder mystery is very easy to figure out. And some of the logic is fridge logic. When you go to your fridge and you think about it later, you're going to be like, oh, why didn't he? But honestly, for most people out there, you're going to be so invested in the emotional stakes of the film that all that other stuff is either not going to matter or is just going to fly over your head and you're not going to notice it. And that's okay. Anyway, my fellow Gorehounds, as per usual, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so that you're notified of my videos immediately upon their upload. And don't forget to check out my Patreon, which I'll also link in the description below. And remember, if you decide to go the Patreon route, even $1 a month can go a long way. And with all that said, my fellow Gorehounds, I'm going to turn off these fucking hot lights, turn on those fucking cool fans, and then bask in the cool, light breeze. Oh, God, it sounds so nice. Peace out, my fellow Gorehounds.